Hello, everyone. I'm Paris Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to 12 O'Clock High, a podcast on business leadership with Tom Fox, hosted by Richard Lummis.
This is Tom Fox. Richard Lummis is on assignment this week, so I am visiting with Amy Barnard-Bahn, a well-known compliance and leadership expert, to take a look at 5 of the top leadership failures and scandals from 2019. This special series on 12 O'Clock High is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network. Thanks so much for listening. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox with Amy Barnard-Bahn, and we are starting a 5-part exploration of some of the top leadership and corporate failures in 2019. Today, we're going to start with I'm not sure it's my favorite, but it's a lot of people's favorite, and that's Adam Neumann from WeWork. So, Amy, first of all, welcome, and I'm really excited to see where we can take this.
Thanks, Tom. I'm really excited, too.
So what, from your perspective, Amy, what did you see as either a leadership or corporate governance failure at WeWork?
Gosh, where do we start? We have, a charismatic and eccentric and completely inexperienced founder who really went boom to bust. At one point, the company was valued at $47 billion, and the company started as a side venture. Adam was a fairly broke entrepreneur and just kind of decided to start leasing some co-working space, and then his other businesses failed miserably, but this one really took off. And it's incredible. From 2010 to 2019, it grew from 450 members to 527,000 members, and they just opened one of the largest office spaces in London yesterday with HSBC renting seats. So you kind of can't dismiss the guy, but he really took what was just a leasing business and made it into a lifestyle brand, or tried to. And I think what's interesting about him as well is he's kind of a founder type that we've been used to seeing in Silicon Valley, but he's based in New York. It's interesting to kind of dissect how he got to where he is and where they are now.
Amy, and that last point is the one I wanted to explore with you because you have worked in the Valley extensively. This is the only sort of unicorn entrepreneur on our list of corporate and leadership failures from 2019. I saw a qualitative difference in Adam Neumann from Elizabeth Holmes, from Travis Kalanick, and some of the other sort of catastrophic failures we've seen over the years. I saw someone who recognized a market need, and he certainly found a market niche. But he left that very, very quickly. And what I saw was really just a long con. And that once he moved away from his original niche, he was able to con a wide variety of people. He conned the people that worked for him as employees. He conned investors. I'm not sure if he conned SoftBank, but they certainly became an enabler, giving him literally billions to do things as different as starting private elementary schools to coffee and non-meat expense accounts. And after it became clear about 18 months ago or maybe 15 months ago, he was not going to be able to cash out of WeWork. He was going to have to go public. It really seemed his leadership skills or his leadership took a deeper dive down. But I guess somewhere in that question is he really different than any of the entrepreneur failures that you have seen in the Valley that you really studied over the past few years?
Well, he had vision and he had force of personality. But I'd say, like some of the other leaders we've seen fail, he really lacked self-awareness, and that tends to decrease as you rise to the top. If you're not successful, I would say the best leaders do maintain self-awareness and humility, and they keep people around them that will be truth tellers. And I don't see that with Adam at all. In fact, if you look deep at the culture, and you've mentioned several things, he created a toxic culture, everything from tons of conflicts of interest in his company. His wife was very involved. And he governed the company completely. I think starting in 2014, he had special voting shares with supermajority voting power, 10x, the board. So he had total control of the board. And that led to things that actually remind me of Theranos. His wife had the power to name his successor. The board approved, I think, every personal loan request they got. Recently, they just approved $362 million. So he was borrowing against the company, not something most boards, should approve. And then they leased space in which Adam had financial stakes as well. So, set the company up in a way that he had total control, friends at the top. There are other things that are pretty famous in terms of his high-end tequila and marijuana use at the office. There was, I think, one of the situations that really summed up what must have been a really confusing and toxic leadership situation was when he fired 7% of staff in 2016. He apparently walked into an all-hands evening meeting, was very serious about saying, expressing concern about having to lay off 7%, and that the move was tough, necessary to cut costs, but the company would be better because of it. And then suddenly employees came in carrying trays of shot glasses of tequila, followed by toasts and drinks. And then Daryl McDaniels of Run DMC ran in, gave Adam a hug, and did an impromptu concert for the staff. So I just can't imagine what it would be like to work there. They said that his wife, Rebecca, would, after meeting employees just for a couple of minutes, fire them because she didn't like their energy. And yet this is a guy who had a yoga mat and professed to, care about people in the world. And so it's just kind of a crazy guy, I think, that just kind of got out of hand. If you're drinking on the job and doing drugs and then going to meetings, you really probably aren't very self-aware and don't have the ability to read and relate to other people. And I don't know that leads to the best business decisions either.
Amy, we could probably do a podcast on your professional expertise, but one of those is corporate governance and more specifically the board of directors. Once again, drawing upon your Valley experience, we had clear board failures with Theranos. We had a board perhaps didn't step up in time, but eventually turned the corner with Uber and Travis Kalanick. Now we have the board initially failing in WeWork, but once again, when the IPO didn't happen, the board did step up, or at least the principal shareholders in the board. Do you see sort of an end to this run of brilliant entrepreneurs, visionaries, disruptors who are able to control a board, and that boards are taking back at least in the public sphere, the power they're required to have? But of course, these are all privately held companies. Have we turned a corner? Or I think we've asked that question over each of the scandals you and I have talked about. What do you think about it?
Great question. Yeah, great question, Tom. I think this is one where the investors actually stepped up. The IPO was ultimately his undoing. When they finally disclosed how they were working, people looked at the business model, and that's when it started to fall apart. There was a CEO of an analyst firm that told Bloomberg that the prospectus that was issued was a masterpiece of obfuscation. And a lot of the conflicts of interest that the board had approved were actually finally then made transparent because, as you pointed out, when it's private, you don't know. And then that's when the valuation really started to tank. And that's when SoftBank, I think, finally got wise, the high-flying Japanese investor, Mayoshi Son, finally, I think, got wise to, maybe this isn't going to be the next Alibaba, which he had successfully invested in. And he is actually one of the people that kept encouraging Adam to go big. He kept saying, go bigger, go bigger. And so some of those side businesses that you mentioned, I think, unfortunately, were encouraged by this private funding. That's what has made Silicon Valley kind of change the rules of the game for going public and for funding these generally, crazy but disruptive and potentially amazing ideas. The economics of major startups have not been bound by a few basic laws of monetary gravity, if you will. It used to be that when you turn a profit, that's when you think of expanding, and that's when you get a loan or you get, VC money or wherever you are in your, corporate journey. What's happened is we've gotten these charismatic founder CEOs that have been able to convince very wealthy people to invest in them. And there's not a lot of scrutiny on the business model. There's not a lot of experience or interest in board governance and setting a corporation up properly. And so you get what you get here. What I find interesting here is whether the investor community, when an IPO comes out, is actually going to now really have we had enough? Are we actually going to go back to maybe a little bit the good old days of having a business model that is tested and having a CEO that's cut his chops maybe somewhere else first and has greater humility and self-awareness around their leadership and how that impacts others. So I'll be interested to see that.
Well, perhaps we can conclude on the note that Adam Neumann's quest to elevate the world is apparently on hold for some period of time now.
Looks like it.
We unfortunately are near the end of our time, but I hope our audience will join us again tomorrow where we take a look at yet another corporate failure that is continuing in the news, and that, of course, is Boeing. So, Amy, I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you, Tom. Me too.
This is Paris Fox again. We hope you enjoyed this episode of 12 O'Clock High, a podcast on business leadership with Tom Fox. If you enjoyed the show, please go to iTunes and rate the podcast. Thank you for listening.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I hope you enjoyed this part 1 of our 5-part series on corporate scandals and leadership and corporate governance failures from 2019. Tomorrow, please join us again as we take up Boeing.